the whole world is running in one direction. Tesla, BYD, and every major automaker is pouring billions of dollars into electric vehicles. Governments are banning petrol cars, charging stations are popping up everywhere, and the future seems locked in, silent, battery-powered, electric. But suddenly, Honda steps onto the stage and says, "Wait, we have something different. Something that could change everything." And just like that, the EV dream is shaken. Because Honda has unveiled a machine that doesn't need hours of charging. A car that feels like an EV when you drive it, quiet, smooth, efficient, but never leaves you stranded looking for a plug. A system so advanced that it might solve the three biggest problems haunting the electric revolution: charging time, battery life, and cold weather performance. This isn't just another hybrid. Honda calls it a hyper-hybrid. A technology that promises EV-like experience, without EV-like pain. So the big questions are: has Honda just created the true car of the future? Should Elon Musk be worried? And is this the beginning of the end for the EV dream as we know it? Stay with me, because in this video we're going to uncover the full story, the roots of Honda's innovation, the science behind this new engine, and why this move could shake Tesla, BYD, and the entire EV industry to its core. To understand why Honda's latest move is so important, we first need to look back at where it all began. Because this isn't just the story of a company, it's the story of a man, a dream, and a relentless obsession with engineering. The year was 1906. A boy named Soichiro Honda was born in a small village in Japan. He wasn't born into wealth, privilege, or power. In fact, his family was poor. His father was a blacksmith, and little Soichiro grew up surrounded by the sounds of hammers, machines, and the smell of oil. From the very beginning, he was fascinated by machines and speed. By the time he was a teenager, he was already working in a small garage, repairing cars, studying every nut and bolt. He had no formal education in engineering, but what he lacked in schooling, he made up for with pure passion. His first big project? Making piston rings for Toyota. But he failed. Again and again, his designs were rejected. Most people would have quit. Not Soichiro. He kept improving, kept learning, until one day his rings were finally accepted. But just when things were starting to look up, disaster struck. During World War II, his factory was bombed to the ground. Everything he had built, gone in an instant. Did he give up? No. He improvised. With Japan in ruins, he attached a tiny engine to a bicycle, creating a motorized bike that could get people around cheaply and quickly. That simple invention was the seed of something much bigger. In 1946, Honda Motor Company was officially born. At first, it was small, just motorbikes for everyday people. But in 1958, Honda released the Super Cub, a small, affordable motorcycle that became a global phenomenon. It wasn't just reliable, it was legendary. Even today, the Super Cub remains one of the best-selling vehicles in history. From there, Honda grew unstoppable. They moved into cars, launching the Honda Civic in 1972, a car that was affordable, fuel-efficient, and perfect for the middle class. Soon came the Honda Accord, which won over the American and European markets. By the 1980s, people around the world had one thing in common: they trusted Honda. Whether it was a motorcycle in India, a Civic in America, or an Accord in Europe, the name Honda meant one thing: reliability. But Honda wasn't just about cars and bikes. They dreamed bigger. They worked on robotics, jet engines, even humanoid robots like Asimo. They weren't just an automaker, they were an engineering powerhouse. Still, when it came to the EV race in recent years, Honda seemed behind. While Tesla and BYD were making headlines, Honda kept quiet. Some critics even said Honda had lost its edge. But history shows us one thing: Honda always plays the long game. And every time the world doubts them, they come back with something revolutionary. And that brings us to today. After decades of trust, innovation, and resilience, Honda has revealed a technology that could change the entire auto industry once again: the hyper-hybrid. So, after years of being called late to the EV party, Honda finally stepped forward. But instead of unveiling a shiny new all-electric model, they shocked the world with something completely unexpected: a new kind of hybrid system. Not the old hybrids you've seen before. Not like the Toyota Prius or Honda's earlier hybrid models. This was something new. Something Honda calls the hyper-hybrid. At first, critics were confused. Why hybrids, when the world is chasing EVs? Why not go fully electric like Tesla? But when Honda revealed the details, the industry began to take notice. Because this isn't just a halfway solution, it's a radical rethinking of how a car should run in the 21st century. Here's the big idea. It drives like an EV most of the time, smooth, silent, instant torque. But it doesn't need a charging station. The petrol engine inside recharges the battery automatically. And unlike normal hybrids, where you switch between petrol and electric, this system coordinates both at the same time, working in perfect harmony. Think of it like an orchestra. In a normal hybrid, the petrol plays first, then the electric steps in, and they take turns. But in Honda's Hyper Hybrid, it's a full symphony, each part playing together at just the right moment, creating a performance that feels seamless. The result? A car that gives you the efficiency of electric, the range of petrol, and the confidence of never needing to plug in. This is why experts are calling it a game changer. Because for millions of drivers who are still hesitant about going fully electric, Honda might have just built the perfect bridge between the present and the future. But what makes this hyper hybrid system so different from every hybrid before it? And why could it keep Tesla and BYD awake at night? Let's break it down. Now let's get to the heart of it. How exactly does Honda's hyper hybrid engine work? At first glance, you might think it's just another hybrid like Toyota's Prius. But once you look under the hood, you realize this system is on a completely different level. Here's the setup. A 2.0-liter Atkinson cycle petrol engine, efficient, lightweight, and tuned for economy, not raw power. 2 electric motors, one that drives the wheels, and another that works almost like a generator, recharging the battery. A smart control system, this is the brain, deciding in real time how to blend petrol and electric for maximum performance and efficiency. But here's the magic. In most hybrids, the petrol engine is constantly switching on and off. Sometimes it drives the car, sometimes the electric motor does. It's like two people fighting over the steering wheel. In Honda's Hyper Hybrid, it feels different. The car runs on electric power most of the time, so you get that smooth, silent EV-like feel. The petrol engine doesn't always drive the wheels directly. Instead, it kicks in mainly to recharge the battery or when you need extra power, like accelerating on the highway. This means that, at low speeds, you glide almost silently on electric power. At medium speeds, the petrol engine quietly supports the electric motor, keeping the battery topped up. At high speeds or heavy acceleration, both systems work together, giving you a powerful surge without any hesitation. It's seamless. There's no jerky switching, no sudden revs, no awkward pauses. Just smooth, consistent power. And the numbers? They're impressive. The Hyper Hybrid produces around 184 horsepower, more than enough for highway driving and city traffic alike. But here's the real kicker: fuel efficiency. In real-world conditions, this system delivers between 20 to 28 kilometers per liter. That's diesel-like efficiency, but from a petrol hybrid. And remember, no plugging in. No waiting at a charging station. The car charges itself as you drive, thanks to its intelligent dual-motor setup and a powerful regenerative braking system that captures energy every time you slow down. Even the noise management is refined. Most petrol engines are noisy when they kick in, but Honda has tuned this system so well that even when the engine is running, it's whisper quiet. You still feel like you're driving an EV. In short, EV feel heavy checkmark. Petrol reliability heavy checkmark. Diesel-like mileage heavy checkmark. Zero charging hassle heavy checkmark. This is why Honda's Hyper Hybrid isn't just another step, it's a leap forward. But here's the real question. Why is this system such a threat to EV companies like Tesla and BYD? To answer that, we need to look at the 3 biggest weaknesses of EVs, and how Honda just solved them all. Now, if electric vehicles are the future, why hasn't the world completely switched to them yet? Why are so many people still hesitant to buy an EV, even when governments push, and companies like Tesla and BYD spend billions on advertising? The answer comes down to 3 major weaknesses. Keycap 1: Charging time. Let's start with the most obvious one: charging. With a gasoline car, you stop at a station, fill up in 3 minutes, and you're on your way. With an EV? Even the fastest chargers can take 30 to 40 minutes to give you a decent range. And if you're stuck with a normal home charger? You're looking at 6 to 10 hours to get a full charge. Now imagine you're late for work, or you're on a road trip, and your EV's battery is running low. Suddenly, you're not driving, you're waiting. And no matter how advanced EVs get, waiting for a charge will never feel as convenient as refueling. This is where Honda's Hyper Hybrid steps in. You never have to plug it in. The petrol engine recharges the battery automatically as you drive, and regenerative braking keeps topping it up too. In other words, zero downtime. You just keep going. For people who drive long distances, or live in cities with poor charging infrastructure, this is a game changer. Keycap 2: Battery degradation. The second problem is one that EV owners don't like to talk about: battery life. every lithium-ion battery has a limited number of charge cycles. After a few years, range begins to drop. Your EV that once drove 300 miles now barely makes 200. And replacing that battery? It can cost thousands of dollars, sometimes nearly as much as buying a small car. With Honda's Hybrid, the battery isn't under constant stress. Why? Because the petrol engine and the second motor share the load. One motor drives the car, the other charges the battery, ensuring that the battery is never pushed to its limit. That balance means longer battery life, fewer replacements, and lower costs. In simple terms, the battery lasts longer because it's not carrying the whole burden of moving the car every single day. Keycap 3 Cold weather performance. And then there's the third weakness, one that many people overlook: cold weather. EV owners in Canada, Northern Europe, or snowy parts of the US know this pain all too well. In winter, EV range can drop by 30 to 40%. A car that could go 300 kilometers in summer might only manage 180 in freezing conditions. Why? Because lithium-ion batteries don't like the cold. Chemical reactions slow down, energy drains faster, and suddenly, your car that felt futuristic feels limited. Honda's Hybrid doesn't have this issue. When the temperature drops and the battery's efficiency suffers, the petrol engine steps in to provide consistent power. The driver never notices a drop in performance. Snow, ice, or freezing winds, this car keeps moving like nothing happened. White heavy check mark the bottom line. These three weaknesses, charging time, battery degradation, and cold weather range, are the biggest obstacles stopping millions of people from buying an EV today. And Honda's Hybrid has addressed all three. No charging stress. No expensive battery replacements. No winter performance issues. That's why this engine is being called a bridge between the old and the new. It gives you the benefits of an EV, but without the drawbacks that make people hesitate. Now the question is, what does this mean for Tesla, BYD, and the rest of the EV industry? Could Honda's innovation actually delay the full electric revolution? Let's talk about the global impact. When Honda unveiled the Hybrid, it wasn't just about a new engine. It was about rewriting the rules of the global auto market. Because here's the truth, the timing of this innovation couldn't be more critical. For the last decade, companies like Tesla, BYD, and NIO have been pushing the narrative that full electric is the only future. Governments in Europe, the US, and even China have announced deadlines to ban new petrol cars. Automakers scrambled to develop EVs to keep up. Billions were poured into battery factories and charging networks. But then Honda came along with something different. Not a full EV, not a traditional hybrid, but a system that gives you 90% of the EV benefits without any of the EV headaches. High-voltage 4 EV giants, Tesla, BYD, NIO. This is a problem. Tesla's entire business model depends on convincing people that EVs are inevitable, that charging delays, high costs, and cold weather struggles are just small inconveniences. But when buyers suddenly see a car that drives like an EV, costs less, doesn't need charging infrastructure, and works anywhere in the world, they start asking, why should I wait hours at a charging station when I could have this instead? For Tesla, this isn't just competition, it's a credibility challenge. Because if Honda's approach catches on, the EV transition might slow down by 5 to 10 years. Oncoming automobile for traditional automakers, Toyota, Ford, Volkswagen. Now, let's look at the old giants. Companies like Toyota and Volkswagen have invested heavily in hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and EVs. Toyota, in particular, has been cautious about going all in on electric. With Honda's Hybrid proving that hybrids can still evolve, Toyota suddenly looks smart. In fact, insiders say Toyota is now accelerating development of its next-gen hybrids to keep up. Volkswagen, Ford, and GM, on the other hand, might feel trapped. They've already committed billions to EV-only platforms. Reversing course isn't easy. If Honda's system wins consumers' trust, these companies might find themselves stuck with expensive EV projects that don't sell as expected. Globe showing Asia, Australia, 4 developing countries. And here's where things get really interesting. Most of the world doesn't live in cities with Tesla superchargers on every corner. In countries across Africa, South America, and parts of Asia, EV infrastructure is still years, maybe decades, away. For these regions, Honda's Hybrid is the perfect solution. Drivers get EV-like efficiency without depending on charging stations that don't exist yet. Think about it, a car that saves fuel, lasts longer, handles rough climates, and doesn't require expensive infrastructure. That's not just attractive, it's revolutionary for markets outside Europe and North America. Checkered flag: the big picture. So what's the global impact? EV companies are suddenly on the defensive. Traditional automakers are rethinking their strategies. Developing nations finally have a path toward cleaner, more efficient vehicles without waiting for charging networks. The hyper-hybrid isn't just a new engine. It's a disruption. And if Honda plays this right, it could trigger a domino effect across the entire auto industry. But one big question remains: how will consumers react to this? Will they embrace it as the best of both worlds, or will they still hold out for full EVs? That's where we head next. The hyper-hybrid isn't just a concept or a lab experiment, it's a car people can drive today. And early testers are already talking. One of the first things drivers notice is how smooth it feels. Imagine the silence of an EV, the instant acceleration, and then suddenly, a petrol engine quietly supporting the system without ever feeling intrusive. No jerks, no noise spikes, no awkward transitions. Just seamless, confident driving. High voltage, everyday driving. City traffic, stop-and-go streets, highway cruising, this engine adapts automatically. The intelligent power management system decides whether to run on electricity, petrol, or both at any moment. You don't press a single button. You don't switch modes. You just drive. Early reviews mention no anxiety about charging stations, even during long commutes. Fuel savings, up to 28 kilometers per liter in real-world conditions, rivaling small diesel cars. Battery longevity, no sudden drop in performance after a few years. For people who live in cities where charging infrastructure is weak, or for those who frequently take long road trips, this is a game-changer. Snowflake cold weather and extreme conditions. In snowy regions or cold climates, EV owners often face reduced range. Testers of the hyper-hybrid noticed something remarkable: even when temperatures dropped dramatically, the car's performance stayed consistent. The petrol engine automatically stepped in, maintaining power and range without the driver even realizing it. This is why early adopters are calling it a hybrid you can actually trust anywhere, from urban streets to remote highways. Money back cost and maintenance feedback. Another major talking point is cost of ownership. Compared to full EVs, the hyper-hybrid is significantly cheaper upfront. No expensive battery replacements, no home chargers, and no worries about range anxiety. Maintenance is minimal because the dual-motor system shares the load intelligently, keeping wear and tear low. Globe showing Europe-Africa global appeal. It's not just individual drivers who are excited. Car reviewers, fleet operators, and taxi companies are all taking notice. Why? Because this engine solves practical problems that EVs cannot yet fix: infrastructure limitations, extreme weather, and long-term battery degradation. This means that the hyper-hybrid has universal appeal. Urban drivers who want convenience. Long-distance commuters who need reliability. Emerging markets where charging networks are limited. White heavy check mark the takeaway. The public reaction shows one thing clearly: Honda has struck a balance that almost no one else has. The car feels like an EV, drives like a petrol car, and avoids the major drawbacks of both. For millions of drivers around the world, it represents the perfect compromise: the future of mobility without the growing pains of full electrification. Honda's hyper-hybrid isn't just a clever workaround for today's EV limitations, it could reshape the future of the auto industry. First, let's talk about consumer adoption. Millions of drivers who have hesitated to buy EVs because of charging worries, high costs, or cold weather performance may now find a solution that works for them. If even a fraction of these drivers switch to Honda's hyper-hybrid, it could shift the balance of the market. High-voltage hybrid as a bridge technology. Some analysts call this a bridge technology. Think of it as a stepping stone between traditional petrol engines and full electrification. It reduces reliance on charging infrastructure while still offering efficiency and sustainability. It encourages automakers to rethink the hybrid segment, not as a temporary compromise, but as a long-term alternative. This could also influence government policies. Countries pushing for full EV adoption might now consider hybrid solutions as part of their transition plan, especially in regions where charging networks are still underdeveloped. Globe showing Europe-Africa impact on global automakers. The hyper-hybrid also sends a clear message to competitors: innovation doesn't always mean going fully electric. Tesla, BYD, and others may need to adapt their strategies. EV companies may invest more in hybrid or self-charging solutions. Traditional automakers could accelerate development of next-generation hybrids rather than focusing solely on EVs. In short, the hyper-hybrid forces the industry to think differently about what future mobility really means. Rocket potential evolution. Looking ahead, the hyper-hybrid could evolve into something even more ambitious. Integration with hydrogen fuel cells for ultra-long-range vehicles. Smart grid connectivity that optimizes battery and fuel usage dynamically. Enhanced AI-driven predictive systems that anticipate driving patterns and manage power distribution seamlessly. In other words, Honda isn't just offering a better hybrid today, they might be laying the foundation for the next generation of smart, self-sustaining vehicles. White heavy checkmark summary. The Hyper Hybrid could accelerate adoption of efficient vehicles worldwide, push EV manufacturers to innovate faster, provide a practical solution for countries and regions still struggling with infrastructure. It's a glimpse of a future where technology, convenience, and sustainability coexist, without compromise. So, what have we learned today? Honda's Hyper Hybrid isn't just another car, it's a statement. While the world chases fully electric vehicles, Honda has found a smarter, more practical way to combine the best of both worlds. EV-like smoothness and silence. Petrol-level range and reliability. Diesel-like efficiency without the costs or maintenance headaches. It addresses the three biggest weaknesses holding back EV adoption: charging time, battery degradation, and performance in cold climates. And it does all of this without the need for plugging in. This isn't just innovation, it's a disruption. Tesla, BYD, and even traditional automakers now face a new challenge: a vehicle that offers almost everything an EV promises, but without the compromise. Globe showing Europe-Africa why this matters. For consumers, it means freedom. Freedom from charging anxiety. Freedom from expensive battery replacements. Freedom from worrying whether your car will perform in extreme conditions. For the auto industry, it means rethink everything. The full electric revolution may not be as straightforward as many thought. Companies will have to innovate smarter, not just chase battery numbers. And for Honda? This could mark another turning point in its legendary history. A reminder that the company built from scratch by Soichiro Honda can still surprise the world. Light bulb final thoughts and provocative question. The Hyper Hybrid challenges everything we think we know about cars, efficiency, and the future of mobility. The question is, will full EVs eventually take over completely, or is this the beginning of a hybrid era that bridges the gap for decades to come? One thing is clear: Honda has reminded the world that innovation isn't always about following the crowd, it's about thinking differently. White heavy checkmark call to action. If you found this video insightful and want to stay ahead of the latest automotive innovations, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. That way, you'll be the first to know when we cover the next breakthrough that could change the future of cars forever. Comment below: would you choose a Hyper Hybrid over a full EV? Why or why not? We want to hear your thoughts.